right, we are here today to do Training for Industry program, or what we call TIP, one of our many acronyms. And I want to set a few expectations, but first I want to say thank you to Ronaldo and Vincent and Metro Tech downtown campus. I'm at the downtown campus, and if you have an opportunity to get down here for a workshop or a visit, I strongly encourage you to do so. It's a beautiful, beautiful setting. Ronaldo reached out to me about doing a refresher on TIP training, and that is how this came to be. And so our goal, as we described in the training, is to get through the 5 objectives of an overview of TIP for local businesses, an overview of the commerce TIP process and working with commerce. We're going to talk about how you apply for a TIP, both pre-CTIMs and in CTIMs. We're going to talk a little bit about enrollment, and then we'll have discussion about in regards to budget adjustments, when you need to do a budget adjustment, when you don't, and what that process is. And then we'll go over invoicing, particularly with TIP. Invoicing is very specific. So we'll go over that process and what we're looking for in documentation. Hopefully you have a copy of the BIS guidelines with you. What I'm going to be sharing with you today is I'm just going to share the pages that I feel are most pertinent to TIP and the process. I'll give you the page numbers as we go along, so you'll have those, but just don't freak out that I'm moving through the pages quicker than you may be. And I'll try to allow time for that. Also want to set expectations that I am not going to read the BIS guidelines to you. These guidelines are available to you on our website on the CTIMs page. You can also access, your regional coordinator can send them to you. I strongly encourage you, if you have not sat down and really gone through the guidelines, this is a great time to do so, because it will tell you everything about our programs within workforce and economic development. So these are the business and industry services, workforce and economic development guidelines I mentioned. So hopefully you have a copy of that with you. And I'm going to minimize all my Zoom folks. All right. Get where I can scroll down. All right. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of information. First thing you come to is the table of contents for the BIS guidelines, so you can find any information that you need. We have our contacts for our division. This has to be updated because we've got Brian and Delbo retired, and we have a little bit of changes in coverage, but I think everybody knows who the regional coordinator is for your tech center. If you don't, contact me or contact Max and we will connect you. The other thing I want to point out is here on contacts, the CTIMs and IMD support services and resources. We're going to talk about CTIMs later, but I wanted you to know where all the links are for assistance with CTIMs, and particularly CTIM support, that email right here in the middle that talks about CTIM support. Oh, there we go. Thank you. All right. Then we have the listing of BIS programs, the economic and workforce development initiatives. Those are what we refer to as EDI, which includes the Training for Industry Growth, Training for Industry program, which we're going to discuss today, firefighter training, safety training grants, incubator grants, and LKP TAC. You're probably going to see some acronyms, so just know that the acronym and definitions page is there also in the beginning of your BIS guidelines. Okay, So we are going to start with the general information. I also want to preface this training by telling you that no TIP project is the same. So as much as I'm going to try to give you the most important information and provide you with the resources for getting more information, every company is different, as you are already experiencing, and every TIP project has little gray areas that might pop up in regards to them. So that is also why you have your regional coordinators to help you through the process. So always remember that you have that person-to-person resource for you. So here on the general information page, what I want to talk about is that, where does the money come from? So as you all know, we get state appropriated funds every fiscal year. And part of the funds that we get are specific to workforce and economic development. And they are for these programs that we have here in the guidelines. So we get a certain amount or we budget a certain amount out of those appropriations specifically for TIP. And that amount can vary depending on the funding year from the state. So it can always vary a little bit. We've always had, to my knowledge, over the last decade, we've had TIP funds available, but you do need to understand that they are something that, are fluid, in that it all depends on how much money we get every year and how much, how many projects we get. So I just wanted to point that out to you, that is where the money comes from. And I've highlighted, as we're going through these guidelines, I've highlighted in blue what really pertains to our training today, and that the funding is intended to support but not replace the costs incurred by a technology center in offering classes and training services. Okay. I am going to skip down to, I'd want to point out my page numbers are going to be different from yours. So I'm going to give you the page numbers as we go. So let me catch up to you. We're going to go to page 20. Can everybody see that all right? Do I need to make it bigger? Okay, Okay, I'm gonna take that as we're good to go. So page 20 is the Training for Industry Program Type 52 information that you need to look over first. TIP is it is used for our companies who are expanding their workforce. So your business and industry that is in your district that is hiring new people, bringing on a new division, or bringing on a new expansion of their manufacturing, and they're going to be hiring brand new jobs. That's what we mean by net new jobs. So it is for those companies that we already have in Oklahoma who are expanding, and it is also for new companies that are coming to Oklahoma. You can find out about expansions. Hopefully you already have those relationships with your business and industry in your district. If you don't, TIP is a great value add, or what we might call a carrot, to get in with a new company or a company you realize is expanding. It's something that, it's specific to expansion. And so if you have a company that you hear is expanding but is not a current client of yours, getting in to talk about TIP can be a great way to open that door to conversation and exposure for your services. So a lot of ways that coordinators, biz divisions learn about TIP is through the Department of Commerce, which Patrick will talk about. Of course, your relationships in the community and with your clients, the chambers of commerce, the economic development authorities. Sometimes, our economic development authorities will know about new companies coming in, sometimes before the tech center does, depending on your relationship with that economic development authority. So it's important to keep those relationships going. Now, before I get into the eligibility criteria, I want to let Patrick Clannon, who is our commerce liaison, visit a little bit about how he works with the Department of Commerce when it comes to TIP. Patrick, would you like to chime in?
Absolutely. Thank you all. Glad you all are here. Yes, Lori mentioned I do work closely with the Department of Commerce and their business recruiters in their efforts to bring businesses to the state of Oklahoma. These are companies that are moving out of state to come here, and we'll write the tip letter for them for just that extra incentive for them to come to the state. So I work with all of the recruiters here, whether it's ACEs or ag recruiters or just any of the business development recruiters. So, and they are quite busy. I don't know, Lori, is there anything else you want me to expand on about that? I know that you're going to be talking about TIP, and truly it's a matter of how it all is comes out of the accounting. So,
okay. Patrick, thank you. I don't know if we all heard you because we're on my laptop speaker, so I'm going to repeat what you said. So
that's fine. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So basically, yes, what Patrick does is he offices at the Department of Commerce, and as they are working with companies considering Oklahoma for expansion, or even some of our existing businesses that work very closely with Department of Commerce on other statewide workforce development initiatives, then they will reach out to Patrick to discuss what could this company be eligible for in regards to TIP. And
Absolutely.
so the process internally for you guys and for us is all the same. It's just a matter of, as you know, companies look at different sites, they get different incentive packages from all the different cities or states that they're looking at. And so Patrick doesn't know until it's a done deal, if it's a done deal. So a lot of times he doesn't even know the name of the company because
That's correct.
Confidential. And so by the time he contacts the technology center, the biz directors at the technology centers about what's been discussed, I mean, it has to be a done deal. So what we do have happen on occasion is that your economic development authority may already be in the loop before Patrick even knows what is being discussed. So it's all different for every company, but most everything is kept very confidential. So why I'm saying that is, if you hear something from your chamber or your economic development authority about a new company coming in to the state in your district, then reach out to your regional coordinator and Patrick. He may or may not know, and he may or may not be in the loop. So it's always good to check in with us and see if if this is a potential commerce tip, if we even know.
And I might add that
yes,
you may or may not even know, and I may or may not be able to tell you. So
Exactly.
it does have to be announced because of, like Lori brought up, the privacy and confidentiality.
Absolutely. Exactly. So he may or may not know and may or may not be able to tell us because of the confidentiality of that situation. Commerce. Patrick, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
If you wouldn't mind muting yourself, and that way we'll be able to proceed. So that's the only difference between doing a tip with a local business and doing a tip with Commerce. Basically, you are going to initiate a tip with a local business in your district. Okay. And the process for doing both is exactly the same. So we're going to go to, okay, so we're going to go to the eligibility criteria. So because we're talking about companies, business and industry that is creating new jobs, one of the eligibility criterion is that they produce goods or services that are exported outside the state of Oklahoma and or supply exporters in the following identified ecosystems. So yes, you're going to have some companies who are directly exporting, but you're also going to have some smaller companies increasing their workforce that are supplying those exporters. So that's an important caveat to the criteria. The ecosystems, and these are defined by the Department of Commerce, are manufacturing, aerospace and defense, energy, transportation and distribution, agriculture and biosciences, information and financial service, and health. And we all know there's a whole lot of expansion going on in health. So first of all, that's one of the essential criteria that you have to look at is, are they new jobs? They can't be, so they can't be that they have a current production line person and are moving them in to another, a new line of manufacturing within the business, okay? That is just, moving internally, okay? Where the new job comes in is replacing that production line person who's moving into a new position. So that's an important thing to keep in mind when you're talking with the companies, because they may think that, yeah, this is a new job because it's a new skill set, it's a new job title. That doesn't mean it's a net new job to the company. So that's one of those caveats to keep in mind. The other part of the eligibility criteria, we count 30 hours per week as full-time. So that's a little different for some companies. They do have to be permanent jobs, but they can be temporary to permanent employees. The employer must provide a comprehensive benefit package with 50% of the benefits being company paid within 180 days of hire. Because we want to make sure that these, that these are jobs that are really going to contribute to the economic development of the state. Now, what I have here in red under the third bullet is very, very, very important. Employees are considered to be a new hire after the tip allocation meeting with the company, the tech center coordinator, and your regional coordinator has occurred. So the sooner you learn that a business in your district is going to be expanding, and you look at the criteria in the biz guidelines to make sure they're eligible. Are they are they 30-hour jobs? Are they going to have the comprehensive benefit package? Are they truly new jobs, or as I described earlier, just moving in to another, a higher skilled position? You want to get your meeting between the company and the regional coordinator and you as soon as possible, because even before you get approval of the project, they're going to be hiring, right? And so they're going to want as many, if they qualify, if we have the funds, they're going to want to have as many of those new hires in a paid training through a TIP project. So I cannot stress enough, the earlier you visit with your regional coordinator about the eligibility of this company and discuss whether we should move forward with a meeting with the company, the better. But it is incumbent upon you to go through these guidelines, go through this, revisit this training and make sure you're determining if they are in fact eligible for those aspects of it. Work keys, I know work keys used to be more of a big thing. That can be covered through TIP as well. The non-eligible criteria, and this is important to keep in mind when you are working with the company on the actual training, which we will get to the training worksheet, that they can't be doing on-the-job training. So they can't be actually making a product, at the time. Tangible items or services cannot enter the chain of commerce, because that would put you at an unfair advantage if we were using tip dollars for the company to produce a product or a service under training that went to commerce and they were making money on. So that is where that conflict lies. TIP cannot be used for attrition, turnover, or retention. That third bullet point comes into play when you are working with a company on maybe their second TIP in a new fiscal year or a third fiscal year. I'll get into the specifics later about it, but basically when we do a TIP project, it's based on a certain number of employees at the start of the TIP, and then the training is written for everyone who's going to be the new jobs. So let's say you have 100 employees, you expect to bring on 50 employees and train them during fiscal year 20. Okay, so at the end of fiscal year 20, I say 20 employees, 50. So at the end of the fiscal year of 20, you should be at the company should be at 150 employees before applying for another TIP for fiscal year 21. That is where that attrition and turnover non-eligibility criteria comes in. And again, I know that's kind of a lot to keep in mind, but your regional coordinator is with you all the way and can help you in determining that. Okay, I'm going to page 21. And we're going to talk about method for distributing funds. So as I talked about, the funding comes from state appropriations, and basically the Department of Career Tech is the steward of those funds. And so we have to evaluate every training for industry program on a project by project basis. So we have to be really good stewards of the funds. So what we have devised over the last, I think 4 years, is a calculation system that also includes the return on investment to the state. So what this allows us to do is rank projects, particularly at the beginning of a fiscal year when the demand for TIP funds is the highest. It allows us to, one, based on the information you send to your regional coordinator in your spreadsheet and discussion, it allows them to calculate what the project may qualify for in TIP funds. And it allows us to calculate the return on investment of these funds to the state of Oklahoma. So Max, hopefully I'm not misspeaking here, but the ROI calculates when these new employees at the annual salary they're getting, when that money is going to come back to the state in income tax and sales tax, and basically what their contribution to the state is going to be at that salary. And so that ranking, or that ROI number, again, particularly helps us at the beginning of the fiscal year when we have a lot of demand for TIP projects. Let's see. Yeah. So the next thing in there is about once the funds are designated for a specific TIP project, the timeline that follows is 1, 2, 3 here. I think in your biz guidelines, it says 4, 5, 6, as I noticed that when I was going through that. So that's one of those little edits that I need to make for the next fiscal year. But once a project is approved, and we're going to go through the application process, but once a project is approved, these are the timelines that we stick by in order to make sure that we always have TIP funds, or not always, but we're always being responsible about getting our TIP funds to projects that are actually active. So what would happen in the past was we would have a first come, first serve process. And we didn't have any restrictions on that. So we'd have companies at the beginning of the fiscal year that might wrap up, you know, $300,000 in potential training. And then the training may have never happened because, as always happens with expansions, delays occur, economies happen, pandemics happen. So what we would find is we had all this money at the end of the fiscal year that wasn't getting spent because the training wasn't happening. So about 3 years ago, we instituted that once the project is live, that training must begin within 60 calendar days of the purchase order being issued in CTEMS. Training can't happen before the purchase order is issued. And so what we do as regional coordinators, we monitor the 60-day window to make sure that, you know, once one of you has a TIP project, we're going to be checking, you know, 30 days in, 50 days in to make sure you can show proof that a training occurred. And it can be a sign-in sheet. It can be that you started an invoice for a training that occurred. Whatever you can provide us that shows that training is actually happening. And again, that's to be good stewards of the funds and make sure that we are distributing them to active projects. So the TIP process, this is where it really gets to the nuts and bolts of what you're going to do and what we're going to do. So what you're going to do is inform qualifying companies that TIP funds may be available. Maybe is very important to put into that conversation. You're going to talk about the eligibility criteria. You can talk about how the funds are state appropriated, and that's why they, you know, there's an approval process. You're going to then, if you're going to then visit with your regional coordinator about, hey, I think I have a company that qualifies. This is the information I have so far. And this is, what they're going to be doing. You always want to check and make sure that that eligibility criteria, that they're meeting that before you call your regional coordinator. And make sure that they haven't already started hiring. If they have, then it doesn't mean that you can't still do a TIP project, but you can inform them that if they qualify for a TIP project, then employees they hire after the meeting with the regional coordinator would qualify for training funds. So again, that's why keeping in touch with your clients is very important, to be able to find out when these things are occurring. So so scheduling a meeting with the company, your regional coordinator, and you to go over the training or go over the project and what the next steps. So in practice, what this usually looks like in my experience, is, I have an expert in Jeff Lowe at Tulsa Tech, who was an industrial coordinator for, I'm going to say forever, Jeff, but I say that with love. I think he's on with us via Zoom, and is now a program coordinator at Tulsa Tech. So what would happen is Jeff would go and talk to the business. Usually that's the general manager or the HR director. Usually a lot of times manufacturing, primarily we see manufacturing tips. So he would be in contact with the company. He would learn that they were expanding. He would have the discussion about, the eligibility criteria, if it meets that in his discussion with the general manager, the president, or the HR director. And then he would take that information and come back to me and give me a call and say, hey, I think this company is eligible. Here's what I know so far. Then we would schedule a meeting with the company. And it's at that meeting that basically, we answer, between Jeff and I, any questions about the funding. I always point out about the process of approval, that it usually takes, somewhere between, you usually want to allow 14 business days, just because of the process of the application, which we'll cover in just a bit, and the process of the CTEMS approvals. So we usually tell them it'll take about 14 days. Then Jeff comes back to them and works out all the details on the training. So he finds out what all is, let's say they are adding production line people. Well, you're going to have new employee orientation. You're going to have safety training. And then you're going to get into the more specialized training. Okay. So he has all that discussion with them and determines what all training needs to occur, how many people, how many classes, how many hours. I'm going to show you all this in the worksheet that he produces. But that's what that looks like as an overview. What Department of Career Tech, and specifically what your regional coordinators are going to do, is just what I said there. Discuss the eligibility prior to the meeting with the company, attend the budget meeting, and or provide assistance to the process. Review each eligible application and do the what we call a TIP calculator, a TIP fund calculator, and ROI calculator. So that's where we calculate what the project is eligible for. That is primarily based on the number of new jobs and the hourly wage.
Is the calculator like you guys do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we don't need to see
Yeah.
that or even.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had to question, is the calculator something that the regional coordinator does? Yes. And we don't share that because there are a lot of different things that go into the calculation.
So we shouldn't even really be able to speak to it or understand it. Or
Right, exactly. You are just working on the training that they need. Yeah. And Kirsten, if you would write down your questions.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
you weren't here when I said that, so
Sorry,
that's
sorry.
okay. That's okay. Okay, so that is the process on our end. Once the application is approved, the preliminary application is approved, then we go through the process of doing the allocation in CTEMS. Okay, so the last page there is just sending you to the links to do the, enrollments and invoicing. So I'm going to take just a brief break. Just give me about 2 minutes, and then I'm going to take you to our next page, which is we're going to go on to the application process, and I'll start with page 5 on the biz guidelines.
Lori, do you need a longer break or 2 minutes is fine?
2 minutes is fine. Thank you. Okay, so I was already talking somewhat about the application process. So I'm taking you to page 5 of the biz guidelines, just so you're aware that this page is in there about how you can apply for economic development initiatives, which are, TIP and TIG and firefighter training, as well as the grant application process for safety grant, incubator grant. Primarily, what this overview is of what you're going to do that's universal to applying for all of those different initiatives and grants. So this is just a reference for you. One of the things I do want to point out is that everything starts with number 1 there, where the Technology Center coordinator will create an EDI training budget proposal. That is the Excel spreadsheet that you're going to use. On our website, under the CTEMS page, when you scroll down to Economic Development Initiatives, you'll see a hyperlink that says FY22 worksheet. And that is the link to the Excel spreadsheet. Now, what I'm going to show you today is the Excel spreadsheet that I created for this training. And I will send this to you. You can use it for, put it on save it to your computer, and you can use it or the one that's on the website. More than likely what we will do is put this new worksheet that I've created for this training onto the CTIMS page. But I will send this out to you guys, or Andrea Bradley will send this out to you guys as well after the training. So I'm going to go ahead and go to that document, because this is where it gets fun, or maybe not so fun. Okay. So as you'll notice down here at the bottom, you'll see the tabs that say sample EDI worksheet.
Lori, our screen hasn't changed. We're still on EDI and grant application process.
Okay, thank you. I need to get to the new document. Yeah. Thank you very much, Jenny. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Thank
You
you.
know, it's because I need so much help.
I know you just want a little more attention, right? Okay, so this is, as I said, this is the sample page that we created, and I'll go through each sample. Then you have the EDI worksheet, which is where you're going to fill in the training information. Then we have the TIP TIG information sheet, which I will go over. And then we have a fire department information sheet. This worksheet is the beginning of any economic development initiative, okay? This serves as your template and your backup before doing anything in CTIMS. And we ask that you do this because we are particular about the training descriptions, like you see here for advanced fire behavior or safety training. We're particular about those descriptions because we need to know exactly what's going to be done in the project. We need to verify that the number of students matches the number of new hires that is in the TIP company information tab. We need to verify that the dollars work out. But also, this is for you to track the training. It's for the company to know exactly what training is going to be done in the project. And it's for you to match with your invoicing. And so that's why we're particular about the information that you provide. Now, before you can start completing this worksheet, and as part of your eligibility meeting or your meeting with the company, with the regional coordinator, you're going to want to bring this TIP company information with you. You don't have to complete it right then. Some of these companies that you work with, you're going to already have in your client base, or they're going to already be in our business client base in CTIMS. So some of this information you're already going to have that you can fill in, but there's always information that you need to get filled in by your contact at the company. So created on is just the date that you're starting the form. Status is always pending. You're going to put your tech center, your name. Then we're going to get into the client name, the FEI number, NAICS code. Those are things that you're probably going to have to get from the client if they're not already in your system or in CTEMS. And then it's just basic information about contacts. One of the things, we want to know what they make. So we know we need NAICS code to know if they're in one of the ecosystems. We need to know what they make. So it gives us a concept of, what the training is going to be. Years in business, years in Oklahoma, the number of hourly employees, salaried employees, and the highest level employment. And usually the highest level employment is their current level of employment. Because that's something we're going to look at again. If they look at a tip in the future, we're going to look at, okay, where were they at when we started the tip in FY20? We trained 50 people. They should be at 150 when they apply, when they fill in that number, applying for a tip in FY21. We ask about what type of benefits they have, medical, dental. And then again, that is for you to verify, okay, you have a full benefits package and you're paying 50% of it. Market location, you just want to know where it's located. What I've highlighted here in blue under the training request information, you primarily need to know the number of new jobs. So for a small company, it can be 5 people. Okay, it doesn't have to be, tip does not have to be for mega billion-dollar companies. It can be for small business. In fact, we have done that before, and it's been very helpful to some of our really tiny businesses in rural areas. So we want number of jobs, we want average hourly wage. Okay, so if they're doing product line or production line people at $14 an hour, and then they're doing, 2 other positions that are at $20 an hour and $30 an hour, then we want the average salary for all of those new jobs. Average hourly wage. Contract start date, that's usually today's date, the date that you're filling out the form. Why is the training being requested? Expansion, pre-production. And what's really critical here is this tip ROI calculator information. As Kirsten was asking, that's something, the calculation is what we do, but you need to complete these questions and answer in yellow. So when I was putting together this training, I noticed that our existing worksheet that's on our website had individual hourly wage, but it had yes or no. So I corrected that on this form. So we want that average hourly wage there. And then on the benefits, you're gonna enter yes or no. Metropolitan statistical package. If you don't know whether this business fits into a metropolitan area, just leave that blank. Put a question mark in it. Ecosystem, are they manufacturing? Are they health? Are they financial services? Are they biosciences? Are they aerospace? And if you're unsure about that, get their NAICS code, and that will help us determine if they're in an ecosystem that qualifies. Are they manufacturing? Because manufacturing is huge in Oklahoma. We want to know if they're manufacturing. Significant capital investment of more than $5 million. Most businesses have that investment. If you can get that information due, check that yes or no. If you don't get that information, just put a question mark, and that's something we can follow up on. Depressed region of the state. If you don't know whether the company is in a depressed region, and that's going to be our really, really, really rural areas, just leave that blank, and your regional coordinator has documentation for the metropolitan statistical areas of the state and the depressed region of the state. So just leave it blank if you don't know how to answer it. And then the number of job slots. So I know we already asked that at the top, but we're going to ask it again, because when your regional coordinator gets in here, they're going to, they're going to look at the information at the top, but when it comes to the calculation, they're going to look at that yellow box. Now, a best practice on this, or a suggested best practice on gathering this company information, Jeff Lowe at Tulsa Tech is a great mentor for TIP. So he is always, he's always open to helping anybody with questions. And they have a form that they do themselves that has this information on it, as well as other information. And so you might visit with Jeff. It's jeff.lowe@tulsatech.edu.
Yeah. And Jeff is here with Brandy.
Oh, great, great. So thank you, Jeff. He's a great resource of knowledge, definitely, and expertise in this. Also, some coordinators will just send this page to the company to complete. I don't necessarily recommend that. If you do that, at least send it in a document that, they're not seeing this calculation information, okay? Don't send that part to them. Personally, I think it's more helpful if you bring this information to your initial meeting or your second meeting with the company and start gathering that information one-on-one as much as possible. I mean, the more touches you can make with the client in the process, the more customer service friendly it is, in my opinion. But it's whatever works for you. I just ask that you don't send this TIP ROI calculator portion of this form to them. Okay. So I know we're close to 11 a.m., Karen, and I told you I would probably take a break then. I'd kind of like to get through this Excel worksheet before we take a break, if everybody is good with that here. Okay. So where to start? We'll start at the top. So on this sample page, you've got client name, and we have filled in Need Help LLC. So that's where you're going to put your client name. The school is going to be your school, your technology center. And then we get into the actual training. So we've had the meeting with the client, you and the regional coordinator, and we've determined, yes, this is a project that's eligible for TIP funding. We've explained to them that it's an application process and we have to check the availability of the funds, and that it might take, 10 to 14 business days to get through the application process. Then you have sat down and filled in this worksheet, this tab right here, EDI worksheet. You have filled in this worksheet to cover all the training they need, okay? Now, at this stage, you don't know for sure, and I don't know for sure how much this training project qualifies for in TIP funds. But you want to capture all of the training that they need for these new hires, because even if they don't qualify for enough funds to cover all of the training, that's all training that you more than likely will be able to do or coordinate on their behalf. Okay, so it's just, again, another way for you to be servicing the client, even if the TIP funds don't cover everything. Okay, so it is important as you're doing this as you're working with the company, to say, we're gonna work up everything that you need. And then we're gonna, the regional coordinator is gonna calculate what you qualify for. Okay, and then we'll come back to you and let you know what you qualify for. What happens sometimes is if they don't qualify for the full amount of training that they're requesting, is we'll need to make modifications. Okay, they may say, oh, well, we really don't need that leadership training, so we'll take that off for now, maybe do that next year. So they'll take that off and shuffle where their monies are going to be. So that is why this spreadsheet is our first approach at the application process. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the sample here. Now, because this spreadsheet is what we use for all of our EDI, our economic development initiatives, I have a sample here on line 5 for advanced fire behavior, because that's a firefighter training. And we see that a lot. And what we're providing here too are 3 samples. You can configure a training either based on cost per student, cost per class, or cost per hour, so instructor hour. It all depends on what works best for the company, what the vendor requires, what is easiest for you. But most importantly, when it comes time to invoicing, this training description in box 5A, in box 6A, in box 7A has to match what you provide us for invoicing, the documentation that you provide us for invoicing. So that being said, advanced fire behavior, I have here in red, 16 students, 1 class, 8 hours. We have the date, and that's a projected start date. Okay, we don't hold you to the dates. It can't be a retroactive date, of course, but just use a projected start date, because we know how real world works, and that you're going to have to modify training dates and all of that. So we just want a projected start date. And then we have here OSU FST, that is OSU Fire Safety Training, which is a department of OSU that is what we would call a third-party vendor to provide training. They only do their classes on a cost per class basis. So that is why we have their budget line configured as a cost per class, because that is $47.50 is what they charge for advanced fire behavior. On 6A, this is more what you will probably find for a tip, I'll just say that, what you will find most for a tip, safety training. Okay. What we started doing a few years ago is grouping trainings so that we could reduce the number of budget adjustments that might occur throughout the fiscal year. So in regards to safety training, it may be like this. It may include PPE, a PPE class, a forklift class, a shop tools class, a crane class. It can include all kinds of other trainings that fall under the category of safety. Okay. We wrote this one as a cost per hour. So we have 9 students here in red, 9 students, 4 classes, 4 hours. The 4 hours is per class. You always write the description the students, the class, and the hours as a per class description. So there's going to be 9 students per class, and each class is going to be 4 hours, right? So this one is a tech center adjunct instructor. So you're going to be paying them on an hourly wage, and it's going to, the 4 hours per class is going to come to 16 hours at $40 an hour. Okay. Onboarding. One of the things that we do with TIP is provide a new hire orientation amount of $100 per person. So that is to cover the cost of going through just onboarding a brand new employee, you know, the HR manager going over the paperwork and the policy and procedure notebook, that sort of thing. And that is $100 per person or per student or per new hire. So that's why I have that written as 20, you know, one class at 4 hours. So 20 students at $100 per. And then here in the yellow, again, is just a description of the training. At the bottom, we've got the, you know, whatever books are required, consumables required for the class, and then it's totaled here at the bottom. So that is the Excel worksheet where all of the fun begins. I am going to open it up to questions because I think this is, before we get into CTIMS, this is a good place to open up to questions. So if you will, type your question into the chat and Karen will go through that, and anything pertaining to what I've covered so far that you still have questions about. I'm going to put myself on video and unshare. Yeah, there we go. Stop share. Okay. Karen, do you have any questions in the chat yet?
Yes, I just put that one in.
Okay. All right, the question is regarding movement of employee to new position in company. Just had this question this week. Person moved to new position, not a new job, correct? Correct. Second position vacated by move person that needs to be replaced. Is that a new job or not per tip? Yes. So exactly what you just summarized. When you have a existing employee moving into a new position, it may be at a higher pay, higher skill level, that is not a new job. But backfilling, so to speak, of that person is a new job. So that is correct. Okay. So we're getting to where we're getting close on time, and I want to make sure that I cover some CTIMS information for, I know you guys are going to love CTIMS. I'm going to preface this by saying I am not doing CTIMS training today to your relief and my relief. So what I'm going to do is show you what these worksheets look like in CTIMS, and then I'm going to show you where we've invoiced for some of them and how that looks. And let me see, I'll make sure that.
Lori,
Yes.
just real quick, you had a question about onboarding.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Will you go over again the $100 per employee for onboarding? That is new to me. Honestly, I can't remember when we started that. It's been at least 4 years that I think we've had that. And again, that is just a service to the companies because we know that they're going to have to spend, you know, a certain amount of time just doing paperwork, going over the policies of the company, going over procedure manuals, you know, a lot of that stuff that the HR manager does when they first come on board after they're hired, just to help the company with the cost of that. Trying, that
So,
is why it can only be written in the worksheet in the application as a cost per student.
So it is, I don't want to take a lot of time either.
Yeah.
It is strictly we're going to write it as an onboarding class.
New hire
For-
orientations or onboarding, yes.
Okay. And
No,
then
you're
we're
not going to
go-
write it as a class. You're going to write it as a cost per student.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, I
That's all right.
understand what you're saying. We're going to write it as a cost per student, but it's going to be, it's like it's an onboarding class. And then we're just reimbursing that company $100. If they have 5 people in it, I give them $500.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, good.
So when you do the enrollment, it is going to be a class. And I will tell you up front right now that a lot of times you end up with 1 student per class because of the onboarding process happening, you know, just, you know, might have 3 people in 1 new hire orientation. One day you may only have 1 every other day. So you'll have multiple classes for that. Okay, I am going to take myself off video and I am going to go back to share screen. And I'm not going to share just yet because I need to get into CTIMS. All right, I'm going to try to stay on time. That first part went a little longer. Okay. Okay, so can everybody see this CTIMS page? It has new tip worksheet in the blue, and in the blue it has EDI grant submit worksheet step 2. I need a verbal yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so we talked about that tip company information. This is where that information goes in. So when you're going through the application process in CTIMS, this is where all that information from the tip company info sheet that we just discussed goes. Okay, now we're going to get into the meat of things. So right here under budget line description, okay, this is everything we had in our Excel document, right? Under the training description. So here we have the onboarding, or you could categorize that as new hire orientation for 25 new hires, unit cost of $100, unit type cost per student. Then we have a safety description. So we've got it under safety orientation, and she's got all these different types of safety training. 25 students, 4 classes, 4 hours per class. Now, what she's done here, I say she because the industrial coordinator is female, is she's calculated this per class. All right, so 4 classes at $160 an hour, which is $40 an hour times 4 hours, right? My math. So you can just see here all the different types of trainings that came up, you know, CPR first aid. You can see technology applications. Northeast Tech is the instructor for that. So it's going to be a Northeast Tech person who does that class. We're doing cost per student for the internal auditor. All right, 3 students at $600 per student. OSHA 10, or excuse me, those are the, what are those? OSHA 10, okay. Root cause analysis. So you can see where these descriptions have ended up in CTEMS. This is what you're going to fill in when you make your application in CTEMS. And you can just cut and paste into those budget line descriptions what you put into your Excel worksheet. And then in attachments, you're going to attach that Excel worksheet, okay? Because we always need that as a reference. It helps us, you know, should anything happen, you're always going to want that worksheet as a backup on your end, and then we like to have it as a backup on our end. So, so that is what the worksheets look like in CTEMS. What I'm also going to show you, if we go to, let me go back to share. I'm going to kind of jump back and forth here, so bear with me. I'm going to go back to my biz guidelines and go to page 27 and 28. That's back in the appendix. Okay. So, as I said, I'm not giving you CTEMS training, but I want to show you, and I very much encourage you to print this page off and put it somewhere very, very handy, because the process of approvals, the approval stages and the approval roles is always just good to have as a reference. So when you make application in CTEMS, you're first going to create that worksheet. Okay, that's approval stage 1 is the worksheet. You're going to submit that worksheet. It's going to come to me or come to your regional coordinator for approval. And then it goes to the state initiative supervisor, who is Max, for approval. If I find something in this process, so the worksheet's gotten to me, and I find something in the description that doesn't make sense, then I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to reject it and tell you why I rejected it, and you're going to need to make whatever change is necessary. So that's why we have change request. Change request can only happen in the worksheet stage. Okay. So it goes back through my approval or the regional coordinator approval, excuse me, and then state initiative supervisor. Once that is fully approved, you get the coordinator gets a CTEMS email that says you can now create and submit the agreement. Basically, submitting the agreement is the easy part, because all you have to do is tab through and say submit. You don't have to add anything, any documentation or other than do the acknowledgement check mark and put your initials in the acknowledgement box. However, this is where we get into the 10 to 14 business day timeframe of getting things approved. Because look there, we have 7 or 6 approvals after you submit. You've got your biz director, you've got your RC, you've got initiative supervisor, you've got your local superintendent. That's where a lot of times it gets hung up. So it's very important for you to keep up with the agreement as it's going through the approval process. The 6th stage there is that it goes to the requisition coordinator, and that is Andrea Bradley. Andrea, as Gina mentioned earlier, serves a very important role in this process because she is the one that submits the information to our finance division to get the purchase order. No training can start until that purchase order is entered in CTEMS. I repeat that because when you are talking to the company, all right, so you and your regional coordinator and the company representatives are talking about doing this tip. And they're saying, yeah, we got to hire people immediately. Okay, we're hiring people tomorrow. So what I explained to them is that, okay, anyone you hire after our meeting ends today is eligible to be trained under TIP funds if you qualify and funds are available. However, the training cannot begin for those new hires until we have the training approved in CTEMS. And what I mean by approved is we have that PO entered in CTEMS. So that gets a little confusing for the company. So you have to say, okay, you're hiring 10 people this week. It may take us 7 to 10 business days to get this PO. Okay. So if you can put off training them for the next 2 weeks, then they can be in the training under TIP dollars. But, we cannot use, training can never happen retroactively of the PO. And the other thing about a PO is, as coordinator, you are going to have to get a PO from your tech center because the agency is only going to reimburse the tech center. The agency never sends any TIP dollars to the company itself. Anything that goes to the company for training that they do under the TIP agreement for the new hire orientation, that all comes from you. So you have got to have a PO in place before or at the same time that we issue a PO. All right, so you've got to have that in place. Very important. So we get through everything, you get the PO, you tell the company representative, we're ready to start training, and you start managing the training. What happens a lot of times in that process of managing the training is you may have to do what we call a budget adjustment. Now, these used to be horrible. And they were horrible before CTEMS, but in CTEMS, because of the number of approvals, which are the same number of approvals as the agreement, they could get really, really hairy. It's very important that prior to doing a budget adjustment in an agreement, one, you have to make sure the agreement is fully approved. So that last step of the local finance coordinator entering the OCAS codes, a lot of times that's something that you need to check and make sure that person has done. Okay. Just to make sure that It's fully approved before you do invoicing, before you do a budget adjustment, any of that. Budget adjustments usually only occur as they pertain to, I know we have that here somewhere. Not somewhere. Usually occur only, okay, let's say that you are not, the company is not going to be able to complete all the training that's in the agreement and you want to release funds. Then you're going to do a budget adjustment, okay? Training doesn't happen at all, then you're going to want to do a budget adjustment and release the funds. What happens a lot of times is the company, you know, they may have something like leadership training or some additional safety training, but they've ended up hiring more employees and they need to add more dollars to the new hire orientation, or they need to put more dollars into more classes because they've hired more employees. And so basically they need to take funds from one budget line item and apply them to an existing budget line item in there. And those are really the main reasons why you might do a budget adjustment. When you get to that stage that you feel you need to do a budget adjustment, contact your regional coordinator, let them know what the situation is. I prefer to get that information via email because we have, you know, we serve a lot of you folks in the field and we have a lot of different TIP programs going on at different technology centers. And it's just a lot easier to be able to refer back to that. And also you've got an email that says, yes, you can go ahead and do this budget adjustment. Always, 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 when you do a budget adjustment, put in the note box what you've done, you know, what you've taken, what line you've taken from and what line you're adding to. The more information when it comes to a budget adjustment, the easier it is for us to follow what is occurring. Now, here on page 28, we also have the invoice approval process. Again, I'm going back to very important that your budget line descriptions and the way you have priced your classes is how you're going to provide documentation for invoicing. So let me go to, I'm going to go to I'll get back to enrollments. I know I haven't talked about that, but I'm trying to honor our time and enrollments is very brief. Okay, so I'm going to go to page 10 in the biz guidelines. Yeah. So page 10. We have our invoicing, quarterly deadlines, and then the blue section there says EDI project reimbursement. Very important to know and refer back to instructional rates. Okay, important to know this when you're doing your budget line descriptions and pricing your training. Very important when it comes to invoice time. So as much as possible, we prefer you use your own staff. Technology center staff are reimbursable up to $40 an hour, and that's a max. That includes FICA, okay? The required documentation for instructors when it comes to invoicing, if you've used technology center staff, $40 an hour, all you have to attach for documentation is the participant enrollment form, which is what we call the PEF for that class. So when you do your class enrollments, you're going to put in the type code for the tip training as type 52. All of that's going to be uploaded to CTIMS. And in CTIMS, you'll be able to print off the participant enrollment form. And if we have time, I'll click on where that is. But your regional coordinator can help you find those things. So if we don't cover it today, your regional coordinator is your contact, or you can contact me for any follow-up questions. Company sponsored instructors. So if the company is going to be providing the training, if you have adjunct instructors who are subject matter experts, or third-party contract trainers, so vendors, any of those are reimbursable up to $150 an hour. And that includes FICA. Anything over $150 an hour, you're really going to have to prove that you have to do that. Okay. Any safety training that you do is not to be reported as type 21. It will only go in as type 52 like the other trainings. Consumable expense, important to know, any books that you use, any materials that you use, that can only be reimbursed per completer. Okay, so if the agreement is written for 50 new employees and they're going to need 50 new guidebooks for one of the trainings, and they end up only hiring 25 and 25 going through the training, then we're only going to reimburse you for the 25. That's going to be on a cost per student or cost each in CTIMS. And then down there at the bottom, we talk about the reimbursement for new hire orientation. And then I'm going to go to the page that you're going to want to keep handy, which is the invoicing checklist on page 12. This is how we keep Andrea Bradley happy. And try to keep the invoicing process as pain-free for everyone. So please keep this in reference as you're doing invoicing, or if you're not the person doing the invoicing in CTIMS, make sure that this person has this information. So very important, all documentation for anything you're invoicing for, including the PEFs, need to be submitted as one, PEFs need to be attached in CTIMS as one PDF document. Okay, I know you might ask, well, the PDF is in CTIMS, so why am I having to print it off and then scan it in and send it to you in a PDF with, you know, the invoice from the vendor or the timesheet of the instructor? We ask that because it makes the process for your regional coordinator and for Andrea to review line by line and invoice by invoice and class by class your invoice. So it just makes it much more efficient on our part to have that in one PDF document. I personally print it off. I think Andrea prints that off, and then we match to, you know, each budget line that we're looking at. Just makes it a lot more efficient for us. Reimbursement of third-party vendors, number 3. Very important that you include all of that information under the bullet points. Make sure that you also have the approval signature on any invoice that they provide for you. So we have to have you or the biz director sign that and say, yeah, this is legit. It's okay to pay. Required documentation of instructors, we talked about earlier. For the $40 an hour tech center instructor, you just have to provide the PEF. And for the company sponsored, we show what you need to provide, contracts or invoices verifying the instructor rate and hours. And making sure that you tie the contracts to the timesheets. When it comes to invoicing, really, more documentation is better than having to go back and ask for documentation, because it delays the process of you getting reimbursed and the company getting reimbursed if the company is doing some of the training or you're doing new hire orientation. Travel, we do reimbursement for travel. My personal preference and what a lot of technology centers preference is that the training dollars go toward training and not travel. For one thing, it's a lot of paperwork for the company to provide you, for us to, for you to turn into us and us to review. So as much as you can, we encourage you to, try to encourage your companies to spend the tip dollars on training locally. Okay, so that was invoicing. I talked a little bit about enrollments on page 7 and page 9. We have enrollments and the deadlines for enrollments. So getting that information into your submitters, enrollment submitters. If they do any online training, virtual training, we added all of that due to the state of things last couple of years. Let's see. I did want to add here on page 9, the follow-up interviews and data collection process. Now, this is something that Max oversees as state initiative supervisor, and he looks at all of our tip that we've had in the past year, and he sends out whatever the interview survey is to send to the companies. But it's important that we get that data. It's all confidential. It's what's the word? Going blank there. Aggregated. It's all aggregated, but it helps us in showing our ROI of those state appropriated dollars. When we're asked, how many jobs, what's the contribution back to the economy for the state of Oklahoma? That is what that data helps us collect. As well as, it can help us with collecting just feedback on the program and what works and what doesn't work. So that's really, when it comes to enrollments, I will say this. As much as you can simplify the gathering of the class enrollments for the company, the better. Sarah used to be Stevens, now Edwards at Northeast Tech. She had a company, they were onboarding a whole lot of people, just really struggling with keeping up with the enrollments and being able to get those to the tech center so they could invoice and do all of their work and meet deadlines. So she came up with a very simple Google Doc that enabled them to capture enrollments quickly, class sign-ins quickly, and get it processed quickly on both the company and for Northeast Tech to process it. Sarah, her name is Sarah Edwards. She is now a ACD director at the Claremore campus, and she's happy to share that with you if you would like to see that, if that might help you out. There's lots of best practices in this whole process. I know I shared Jeff Jeff's information earlier, and I'm going to stop share here. And I do need to go to CTIMS one more time because I want to show you what CTIMS, what invoicing looks like in CTIMS. So let me get back to CTIMS. There it is. All right. So I'm going to go into invoice process. Going to FY20. Go to Northeast. Okay, so I'm going to go to this invoice. All right. Short some things up. You can invoice at any time in the agreement as long as there's not a budget adjustment taking place. So keep that in mind, always to check and make sure there's no budget adjustment that is still needing approval. So, of course, we have our invoicing deadlines that are in the BIS guidelines there. So you want to keep up on the invoicing. Don't save it for the very end. So here she has invoiced for the 25 onboarding people. We just click that. Okay. Well, I'm sorry. She's invoiced for 8 of the 25 new hires. All right. So this is a situation where maybe the company only, or at this time that she was invoicing for this quarter, they had 8 new hires. Okay. So that's how many people she invoiced there. For the safety, let's see, we had 4 classes at $160 a class, and they had completed 1 class at the time of this invoicing. Okay. So she puts in 1 unit and it calculates the cost per class. Let me see if there's anything else here. Okay, no other invoicing on that. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to go to attachments. All right. So this is the attachments, or these are the attachments for the invoicing that she has clicked in there. So she's got her Northeast Tech invoice, which actually we don't need, but that's one of the internal documents that they do. So it's totally cool that she put that in there. We have our PEF, okay? When I'm reviewing this and when Andrea is reviewing this, I think I can speak for her on this, is that we look at, okay, she invoiced, her line item was onboarding. We have new employee safety orientation. We know that's the same as onboarding, so we're good there. She has program type 52. The program type code is so important because sometimes your submitters don't realize it's a TIP project that they're putting enrollments in for. Okay, they may see a safety class and think it's a type 21 when it's actually a safety class under a TIP project. So that's part of the internal communication that you guys need to have with your enrollment forms and class creation, course creations and all that. We look at the course hours. We look at the number of students. Okay, so she's invoicing for 8 students who went through new hire orientation for reimbursement to the company for $100 per student, right? And that's what she had on her. Let me go back. Onboarding, we have 8, right? And we have that on our PEF. Up. That. Okay. And let's see, we had a class, right? Well, she's got onboarding and new hire orientation. Ruh-roh. Oh, I'm sorry. This is new employee safety orientation. Okay, so this is our class. That was the 4-hour class for $160 an hour. My apologies. So this is this line item, safety orientation, one class at $160 an hour. Yeah, $160 per class. Okay, and it was 8 students because it was the 8 that were onboarding. So the order that she has this in is safety orientation. I read that as new hire orientation. And then she has her onboarding. This is why we print these out. It's easier for me on paper. Okay, so that's just a sampling of the attachments. I told you I would show you, timed out on me, let me go, where the PEFs are found, and then I'm going to open everything up to questions. So let me get to agreement. Okay. Oh. I am going to, is Andrea still on with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay. I am trying to find where the PEF is, or any of my colleagues. Can you, I'm in an agreement, but I don't see where I can pull up a PEF.
Scroll down to the bottom.
Ah, okay. Oop. Thank you. Okay, so we talked about that participant enrollment form, the PEF to submit in a PDF document. All right, so this is where you pull that from. So what you need is your contract number, which starts with a letter, and then it's usually 4 digits following that. And you can search for them and all of that. You've got program type code, you've got the course name, but it's important that this is where you're going to find that PEF, you're going to print it off, and then you're going to put it in a PDF with any other supporting documentation. Okay, so just for example, there we go. That's what it looks like. Okay, now I told you I wasn't going to do CTIM's training, which I'm not, but I am going to show you once again where you can get the information on our website for help with CTIMs. So let me get to our website and then I will share. There's my share, there's my share. All right. Okay, so here's our homepage. You are going to go to anytime, I'll preface this by saying, anytime you need to get to resources like the biz guideline, this Excel spreadsheet that we went over, the guidebooks to help you do anything in CTIMs, okay? If you need CTIM support, if you need a business client code, because this company is not in our system yet, this is where you're going to go. this little tab right here in the red toolbar, click CTIMS, and then scroll down to EDI, Economic Development Initiatives, right.
Not really. But
Hello?
it's okay. I'll do whatever I need to do.
Okay, somebody's mic is live. Okay, so here are the biz guidelines that we just talked about. Here's the FY22 worksheet, which I am probably going to replace with the one I used today. And then here is the complete technical guide. I don't necessarily recommend that unless you absolutely need to use it. This is the best one, the process guidebook for technology center users. Then we have specifics to budget adjustments, change requests, and invoice process guidebook. So those are going to take you through all of the steps to do any of those things. Sometimes you will have a finance coordinator who says, I don't know what OCAS codes to put in. And so we have OCAS codes for biz. It's really up to the technology center, how, what codes they use. That's not something that's pertinent to us, but that reference is there. I'll just show you real quick on the guy. And we have Carrie Watkins, who is no longer with us as IMD manager. For some reason, she wants to be with her grandchildren. I don't understand why. She and Andrew Byer put a lot of work into this guidebook, and it will literally walk you through every step of the process in CTIMS. But remember, you always have CTIM support. You always have your regional coordinator to help you through the process as well. I'm going to stop share here and share my video. And we've got 3 minutes for any questions. I'm happy to stay on past 12 o'clock and answer any questions, and we will keep recording. But I know that I want to honor everyone's time, and some people may be hungry. I don't know. They may want to leave. So what questions do you have for me or our team?
Lori?
Yes.
Leah Zachary had a question early on.
Okay.
Leah, did you get your question answered? She did? Okay.
Yes, it was answered earlier.
Great.
Okay.
Anyone
I had her
else?
send it to me and then that's what I put in the chat.
Okay. All right. I don't see anything else in the chat. So I know this was a lot of information at once, and hopefully I've answered most of your questions and given you a good, hopefully 10,000 foot rather than 30,000 foot view. But we are hoping that this recording will be helpful, and our goal is to get this on our YouTube channel and be able to share that with you and put a link to it on that CTIMS page I mentioned earlier under EDI. So that is our goal, fingers crossed. If you have any follow-up questions, anything that occurs to you later, feel free to reach out to your regional coordinator, or you can reach out to both of us at the same time. I'm not perfect. I strive for an 87 in everything I do. It's a side joke, but if I misspoke on something, that's very likely to have happened. And so we want to make sure that everything makes sense and you're fully prepared in offering this to your industry. I think if you talk to Jeff, if you talk to Sarah Edwards, if you talk to any of your colleagues who have gone through this process, yes, it's somewhat labor intensive, but all of the companies that I've been involved with on TIP projects are hugely grateful for the opportunity and the relief of not having to come up with those training funds themselves. As I said earlier, if the TIP funds, if they don't qualify for enough to cover all of the training, A lot of times it has resulted in the company still paying for training through the technology center that's not covered. So again, that's just building more of a relationship with you all and showing your value to our industry, our business and industry in the state. I want to finish by saying thank you. We appreciate everything that you all do to support workforce and economic development and everything all the contributions that you make to your technology center in the state. I'm going to end there